Now, notice these reports that I already had created were all for fiscal year 2018. And if you had to go in every year and edit all of your fiscal years again, that's kind of annoying. So there is actually a feature or a thing called prompts, where every time you run a report or a dashboard, it asks the person running it for a little input so that you could set up a prompt for a fiscal year, and then every time you run it, you just choose whichever fiscal year you want. So we are going to try out doing one of those right now. So first, you can have prompts at the analysis level or at the dashboard level, and I'll start with the analysis level, and we'll actually start from scratch. Fulfillment. Okay. Okay. So we want definitely the fiscal year, because that's what we're going to end up prompting on. The month key and the actual month. Did anybody talk about when you're sorting the usefulness of keys? Okay, I'll briefly talk about that. It's sort of a little side issue that I'll show. Okay. Number of loans and loan detail in-house. Okay. So I'm not going to filter by fiscal year because we're going to create the prompt. The month key in the month, month is the words, and the automatic sort is alphabetical, which means when you get your list of months, it's going to start with August and be totally out of order. The keys are just numbers for each of the month. So you can sort by this, which is really helpful. And you can choose by calendar year or fiscal year. Well, they call it fiscal month, calendar month. And that just means the numbering. If it's calendar, the number 1 is January. If it's fiscal, number 1 is July. When we actually run this, well, let's see. This is not going to be how we want it to look like eventually. We have a ton of fiscal years. We don't really want this to show up. But we can't delete it. You know, so often we just can delete things from here, but we still need it to sort. So instead, we're just going to hide it. And there's a ton of different ways you can hide things. I just did it at the criteria level, column properties, the second tab, there's a little checkbox for hide. Okay, so we took care of the month key. And this means when we look at things, it'll be in order July through the following June. In-house loan indicator is just a little, again, a little side detail for fulfillment. This is the way to separate between browses and actual circulating loans. So we're just going to pick one. We'll say we're doing in-house browses. And this one we can delete. We have our filter. We don't need to see it. Okay, fiscal year, we're going to keep it for now because that is what we're going to create a prompt on. Oh, and I'm going to save it just to be on the safe side. Okay. Okay, it's a random name here. Okay. So, quick look at the results. It's actually fewer years than before because not all of them had loans, so that helps a little bit. But you notice that 18, 19, we sorted by month, so those 2 Julys are coming up together, the 2 Augusts are coming up together. So we want to be able to limit that. There is a totally separate tab at the top for prompts. And this is where you add a prompt. So you could add multiple prompts. We're just going to do one. This is the button for a new prompt. And you have 3 choices here. I've only worked with column prompts, and that's probably the most common thing you'll do, so that's all we're going to look at today. And you get to choose which field you want to prompt, and we're choosing fiscal year. So now you get to do some editing here. We're going to just call it is equal to, great. Choice list, it means that the users get a list of what the options are. Text field would mean they'd type it in themselves. There's some other interesting things. So we're going to stick with choice list. Okay, and save it. Now, interestingly enough, when you go to results, taking a while, it doesn't give you the prompt. I wonder how long this will take. Well, let me try to oh, there it goes. Okay, so it didn't ask us for the prompt, so we're still getting the multiples of this. So if you really want to see the prompt in action, you actually have to open the analysis. So here it is, the one that I just created, and we're going to hit open, and now this is what your prompt looks like. It gives us every single fiscal year that was in the list from Ex Libris, which is kind of annoying. So I'm going to show you a little trick. And then here you get what you wanted to see. Okay, so let me show you a trick about how to limit that choice. Okay, we're going to edit this. And we're going to go back to the Prompts tab. And we're going to use the ubiquitous pencil symbol for editing. This line here, options, it gives you more things that you can do. So choice list values, the default is to all column values, but you can change that to specific column values. And then you use that plus sign to choose which ones you want. So here's our whole list of everything possible. Since we migrated in 2017, yep. When did we migrate? We're just going to do those three. And it's just like, I think this is something that Nathan showed, this kind of idea where you have a list and you have the arrows to move them from all of the choices to what you actually want. And this is that same, I'm getting down to the OK button by just using tab. Okay, I'm going to save it. So I'm not actually going to open it because they give you a little preview of what the prompt is going to look like right here. So this is what it's going to look like if we opened the analysis and ran it. So this is much better. One of the one of the settings was whether they can select one or multiple choices. So I left it at multiple, but you might want to change it to really only be one at a time. That's pretty easy to do. Here it is. Enable users to select multiple values. So we're going to uncheck that. And now, see there's no little boxes, you can only choose one thing. So that's probably the way we want it to be. Okay. Let's see, we're gonna open it. Okay. Whoop. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's do it this way. So I want to show you something else that's really useful. Okay, so we left this column in here, but it really is kind of messy looking. But if we deleted it, we'd have no, after we selected the prompt, we'd have no indication of which one we selected. And it would just look a lot nicer to have something show up at the top that said fiscal year 2018 and get rid of this column. So now we're going to do that. Okay, so first thing, we'll just delete this. That's okay, now it's gone. But if we ran it, we'd have no idea it was 2018. So in order to get it show up, there's a little text. There's two steps. The first one is we actually have to go in and edit the prompt. There's our pencil. Under options, there's this. This is going to be annoying to have to use the tab, but we'll do it. There's a thing at the bottom called set a variable. We're going to end up creating a little text box that's going to say, okay, I want to add this little bit of text, but in order to be able to tell it what that text is, we have to define something in the prompt as a variable. So we're going to choose presentation variable. Basically, it's a variable that we're using just to present information. We have to give it a name. For various reasons, you can't have spaces in your name, but this is what's going to appear. So make it something that seems kind of logical. So we chose presentation variable, gave it a name, and that's great. That's all you have to do in the prompts tab. Now in the results tab, we need to add something to our whole layout that calls on that text. So just like Kim showed where we add graphs, there's something way at the bottom, other views, whoops, narrative. And here it is. Now, right now it has nothing in it, so we're going to edit that. And this is in the slides because it's not necessarily something you'd remember. You go into the narrative part. It's simple, but it's like not intuitive. I know. Go to the slides later. So what in the narrative you have to do? Narrative, you do @ and then put what you call the variable, you put it in curly brackets. Totally not intuitive, but that's what you do. And the other not intuitive thing is you put the number 1 here. I'm not going to bother showing. If you don't, you get that little bit of text shows up like as many times as you have rows, which looks dumb. So you pick 1. Okay. And I'm going to save it. So those are our 2 things, and now we're going to open the analysis so we see what it really looks like. Okay, we're going to select our value. There it is, 2018. If we wanted, I forgot, in that editing view where you're looking at the results tab, you can just move those sections around. So we could just like scooch this up to the top. So that's analysis prompts. Any questions so far? Okay. Now let's say that dashboard we were looking at, we had about 4 analyses on there. They're all for fiscal year 18. If you can take my word for this, if you have the 4 separate analyses, each with their own analysis prompt, it doesn't really work on a dashboard. Like you choose that prompt for one of the analyses and that one shows up and the rest don't do anything because you didn't get a chance to fill in the prompt for those. So there's another thing called a dashboard prompt. Then that thing applies to all of the analyses in your dashboard. Now, unlike in the analyses, you don't embed it with the dashboard. Like you can't really edit little details of the dashboard. Dashboard is really kind of all about formatting where you place stuff and what you call it. So you create an object called a dashboard prompt. You have to select your subject area, so you have to make sure that what's in your dashboard matches with the prompt. We picked fulfillment. And this looks very much like the analysis prompt that we did before. So we're going to add it, column prompt. But this time you actually just have to choose, like you don't get your choice of what columns were already in your analysis. You have to choose it. So we're going for loan date, loan fiscal year. We'll just leave this. I'm going to make those same edits that we did before just to save time because we know we want those. So this I'm limiting it to just 2017 through 19. And I'm going kind of fast, sorry about that. And I'm going to do that same thing with the variable because we might want to use that. And I'm going to uncheck the fact that they could select multiple values because we're just going to assume that they only want 1 year at a time. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'll save it. Okay. So there it is. So let me think what order I want to do this. Oops, I'm not sure I saved this. Okay. Huh, that's interesting. Usually when wait. No. That's funny. Usually when that shows up, it implies that you haven't necessarily saved everything, but I'm just going to trust that it's saved. Okay. Let's see. I did do this. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. I already started creating it. Nope, that's not the one I want. I'm going to start a new one. Okay. Okay. So I'm putting it in that same folder we're putting everything else in. Oh, that's nice. It opened up for me. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to add stuff now. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So, interestingly enough, the prompt shows up as its own thing, and you can't, there's no tab to say edit prompts or anything like that. You actually have to drag an object over. So we are going to drag the prompt over and put it at the top. And then I've already created some analyses that are set up to talk to the dashboard prompt, and we'll take a look at them, but I'm going to go ahead and drag them in. We're just going to do the circulating and the in-house. And save. And we're going to run it. Oh, so interestingly enough, so I haven't applied this yet. I believe when you first opened it, let me, it doesn't know that you're filtered. Did I set up a default filter? Depending on what you've set up as a default, if you set up nothing, it adds all of the loans for all 3 of those years. If you can set a default so it only picks one. So the first time you view it, before you've applied anything, like let's say this didn't exist right here, it would be a much larger number than you're going to get. So now, see, it's now 1,000. It's 2,000 something, now it's 1,000. That's just a little quirk of how these things work. But we have our prompt shows up at the top, and this is our analysis. And if we scroll down, here's the other analysis. This also, when we set the prompt, it also set it for this one. So the last thing I need to show you is how we set up the analyses for this, because they're slightly different. The main thing that's different is that there's nothing in the prompts tab, and you actually do add a filter here for fiscal year, and we're going to edit it. And you remember when Nathan was showing us some stuff, no, Kim, wait, who was it that showed the based on results of another analysis? That was Kim, sorry. So in that same bottom area, there's an option that says is prompted. And so that tells us analysis to, when it runs, to look for some kind of external prompt. It's external to this analysis. So those are the 2 things when you're setting these up that you need to do differently. Nothing in the prompts tab, and set up a filter that says fiscal year is prompted. And the other thing that I did, just because I like the view, is you can still add that narrative box that's calling up the presentation variable. So even though the presentation variable is coming from the dashboard prompt, it will still work here. Now if you tried to run this analysis by itself, it would not work very well, because it's really trying to talk to some external prompt. Okay, that's a lot. It gets, like once you start playing around with it, it gets easier, but like when you're just seeing it all at once, it's a little overwhelming. Are there any questions? Okay, I think that's it. Joe, it's all you. This is the last